Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of DGS2 Case 3. We have Madame Rozaic on the stand right now, and she's about to testify about the particular wax figure that was stolen and then brought back. Let's get into this. Alright, the professor's wax figure. The display in the Chamber of Horrors is currently set up to resemble the scene from that terrifying rumor. The mold of his face was made with the wax right from the criminal's corpse. That's the Rosaic's creed. With the cooperation of the gravekeeper, I was able to wait at the gravesite just before the burial. I hid at the cemetery and waited to hear from the gravekeeper. I ran into some unexpected complications that night in making the mold. It was nearly dawn, and I was panicking over the possibility of being caught.
The gravekeeper?
Yes, we're dead set on getting our mold of the murderer himself. So I asked the gravekeeper and snuck in. I failed to see what trouble it was to anyone.
So you're saying that you actually saw him then? Saw the murderer's real face?
Naturally, I'm aware of the fact that his identity was top secret. It's simply that. Rozaic must have the real thing. That's all.
Lord, help us.
Oh my god, Baroque.
Actually, I've seen Madame Rosaic's special exhibit room myself. A serial killer rising from the grave. It's truly a terrifying sight.
That was the rumor that had all of London quivering with fright 10 years ago. I have here a newspaper article that was run at the time. The scene in the special exhibit room was modeled after the description in this article. This article was the most detailed one, written based on the eyewitness's account. 10-year-old newspaper article. An article written based on an interview with an eyewitness who saw the professor rise from the grave he'd been buried in after his execution.
The dead rising from the grave. What a foolish rumor.
Hamas love foolish rumors. Our museum shows the scene as if it had really happened. That wax figure was kidnapped a few days before the murder, right? Yes. Of all of my wax figures, they had to choose the professor.
True. It's certainly intriguing. Now then, defense your cross-examination.
This wax figure is what links Drebber and Dr. Sith. Must be something behind it that we haven't seen yet. Just have to find whatever it is, and prove it. Prove that Drebber and Dr. Sith were in this together. Is that true of all wax figures on display? Yes, the dead and living alike cooperate with our endeavors. Been getting quite a few letters from the vicious criminals down at the prison recently.
What kind of letters?
Once I get executed, please make a wax figure of me. That sort of thing.
I see.
Madame Rozaic has made quite the name for itself, you see. Being made into a wax figure is something of a status symbol for those villains. Something about that seems wrong. But the serial killer who really helped us, Rozaic, gain star status here in London, is the one displayed in the special exhibit room, the professor.
You intend to say that you took the mold straight from the man himself?
There are no exceptions to the Rozaic creed. There's just this real uneasiness that's just hovering over this entire case. Like, yeah, there's this whole, like, was trying to prove Benjamin innocent stuff, but then there's this whole thing with the professor that's just kind of hanging in the background. It's just kind of creeping. Unexpected complications. What happened? I was going to make the mold with wax using the corpse's actual face, but when I removed his mask, his mouth fell open and ruined everything. Huh? Think about it. The man was dead. Oh no, this is gonna get really creepy. That meant that all his muscles had relaxed, so I couldn't get his jaw to close. What a terrifying mental image. Normally, I'd have an assistant on hand for such occasions, but I was alone that night, so it ended up taking more time than expected. What do you mean, than expected? For starters, whenever I take a mold of someone's face, I always make sure to wait 3 hours after their death. 3 hours? Why that amount of time? Rigor mortis. Rigor mortis? It's a phenomenon that occurs to bodies that have died recently. Generally speaking, apparently a corpse muscle had begun to stiffen about 3 hours after death. And after about 10 hours, the body is completely stiff. And then after that, it seems that it goes slack once more. It's possible to calculate the estimated time of death for someone who's died unnaturally using the progression of rigor mortis. Well, I certainly learned something today, even though it was something scary. Rigor mortis sets in 3 hours after death, and it starts with the jaw. I see. And that's why you wait 3 hours. If I don't, the jaw will come open and make my job far more difficult than it needs to be. Ugh. I'd rather not hear any more about this. How about that bit of testimony Madame Rozaic just gave? It's important? Wait and see. It's important. Regarding that tidbit you just shared about rigor mortis, would you mind adding it to your testimony? It might be important. Yes, certainly. I don't mind. I wonder what it was about Madame Rosaic's story just now. The atmosphere in the court seems to have gone quite rigid after hearing it. Susato! I really think I could have done without that comment just now. Susato!
In that case, the witness shall update her testimony.
Certainly, Your Honor. Unexpected complication I ran into that night when trying to make the mold was that rigor mortis hadn't set in yet. Interesting. Alright, we'll present the autopsy of the serial killer. My stylus. Madame Rozaic, I have here the autopsy report that was created 10 years ago. It's a record verifying the professor's death due to execution. And? What about it? There's a major contradiction here between the remarks written in it and the testimony you just gave. What? What are you talking about, Japanese boy? It was nearly dawn that day when you took the mold of the professor's corpse. And at that time, rigor mortis still hadn't set in yet. Is this correct, Madame Rozaic? Precisely. Rigor mortis sets in 2-3 hours after death and begins with the jaw. Yet his jaw was as loose as they come. He'd hardly seemed dead any time at all. Then, is she wrong or is the autopsy wrong? On the other hand, I have here the autopsy completed by Dr. Sith. It clearly contains the following statement. June 17th, 12 o'clock a.m., confirmed dead by hanging. What? If he truly was dead at midnight, then naturally, rigor mortis should have already set in by that time. Yes, I expected his jaw to be locked tighter than a fortress. Which means that there's an error in this record. A coroner couldn't possibly confirm a person's death in error. In which case, there's only one conclusion we can draw. That is that the execution did not occur at that time. What? Damage!
Nonsense! You intend to call into question not only Dr. Sith, who wrote that autopsy report, but also Barclay Prison, where the execution was carried off.
But that's ridiculous!
What?
Things weren't like this in my...
You seem to be overlooking one absolute fact. Which fact? The fact that the professor unmistakably died that night.
That's right. There's no mistake about that. After all, I took his loosely rattling jaw into my hand and...
The professor did die, but... what if he didn't die by execution? What? Ridiculous. Then what on earth do you propose happened that night? It's hard to believe, but this might be the link I've been looking for. Dr. Sith, the professor, and a certain other person. I have evidence that shows what occurred that night. Oops. Where'd my stars go?
In that case, you will present that evidence. Evidence showing what happened on the night of the execution.
Let's present that article that we just got, like right now.
Take it.
The events of that night are recorded in his newspaper article.
Bless you, Rogi.
Executed criminal returns to life in the dead of night at local cemetery. Well, what do you think about that? Actually intend to claim the inmate rose from the grave that he'd just been buried in. If this article is true, then it would mean that the professor who was supposedly executed rose from the grave and was killed again. Oh, that's creepy! Impossible! That... nothing more than gossip propagated by a third-rate rag. Can you really say that with certainty? What? The issue is that there's an eyewitness featured in this article.
An eyewitness?
It was a young man who snuck into the cemetery.
An eyewitness to an event like that. It's obviously just a worthless flight of fancy.
Besides, even if such a witness did exist, we have no way of knowing who it...
Oh, no, we know. Calm down, Judge. We got this. We already know who the eyewitness is. Impossible.
Don't tell me you're actually able to provide the court with the name of that person, defense. The name of the person who witnessed the fantastical scene that night.
I can, Your Honor. I've seen that eyewitness for myself. Well, everyone has it here.
In that case, defense, present that person's name. Who was the youth who witnessed this unbelievable scene that night 10 years ago?
Mr. Enoch Drebber. It's none other than Enoch Drebber. Drebber?
You mean a previous witness?
The Chamber of Horrors at Madame Rousseau's House of Wax is a marvelous recreation of the incident 10 years ago. A condemned prisoner rising from his grave in the dead of night. And additionally, there's also a wax figure of a young man who saw that terrifying scene. And that wax figure is a young Enoch Drebber.
Order! Good heavens!
Enoch Drebber was in Lowgate Cemetery.
Is there some significance to the name Drebber?
That's right. Madame Rousseau doesn't know yet. Yes, I believe his name is rather significant to you. To you too.
To me?
The one responsible for stealing the wax figure of the professor was also him. It was Enoch Drebber.
Huh? Oh, my. I never could have dreamed.
Could it be that you're also familiar with the name Enoch Drebber?
Yes, I am. It was long ago.
Huh? What? What did you say?
Then perhaps you wouldn't mind telling us what you know.
Yes, very well.
Oh god, this song.
10 years ago, a certain young man came to the cemetery and witnessed that horrific event. Any newspaper at the time worth its salt ran that rumor for days on end. However, all the newspapers referred to the witness only as a certain youth, and never printed his name or anything regarding his identity. Aside from one paper. Just one paper. That was the Daily Circus. It ran the article I gave you earlier.
This article contains his name?
There it is! The name of the university student who experienced this shocking event is Enoch Drebber. A youth living in the student halls at London University where he studies science. That's what it says.
You're right.
When I read this article, I went to meet with him. This young man who witnessed the condemned prisoner rising from his grave. Whether his story was true or not, it was a perfect scene for the Chamber of Horrors.
So you went to meet Mr. Drebber and made a wax figure of him?
Yes. At the time, he was a desperately impoverished student, studying science at London University. I paid him £5 for the right to make a wax figure of him. And that's the scene that's been recreated in the Chamber of Horrors. "10 years ago, a certain young man informed the public that he witnessed the sight of a supposedly executed prisoner rising from the dead. The public enjoyed his declaration, thinking it a rumor, and consequently forgot about it. And now, 10 years later, he stole the wax figure of that condemned prisoner and used it to commit a crime of his own. It's likely that he used it as a body double of the victim's corpse, regardless of the fact that neither his face or his build even remotely resembles that of the victim. Why on earth would he do such a thing? And then, 3 days ago, Dr. Sith came to the scene of the accident to inspect the corpse. If it had been a wax figure acting as a body double, she would have naturally known that at a glance. Yet, she instead proceeded to submit the victim's autopsy report. Why on earth would she do such a thing?
Are you trying to say it's because that wax figure was of the professor?
The condemned prisoner, whose death Dr. Sith was supposed to have confirmed was alive, and Drebber witnessed the moment that that condemned prisoner came back to life. Dr. Sith, that must have been a deadly secret. That's precisely why Drebber used that wax figure as the body double. Your Honor, please summon Dr. Sith to the witness stand right away. The defense believes that the connection between the two of them must be investigated.
But, according to the report submitted by the prosecutor's office today, Dr. Sith is unable to make an appearance in today's trial.
Dr. Sith herself said something similar earlier, didn't she? Van Zieks will not be calling me as a witness in today's trial. Lord Vortex has forbidden it. Lord Vortex? There's a seal that must never be broken, and it's on the Professor incident. Kindly accept that you won't be able to drag me into this.
Wanna bet?
What happened on the night of the execution 10 years ago? I'm sure Prosecutor Van Zieks wants to know that more badly than anyone.
The prosecution rescinds that entire report. Holy shit!
But wasn't that proposal submitted by the prosecutor's office as a whole?
Shut up! The one who decides the plan for each individual trial is the prosecutor in charge. Namely, me.
Prosecutor Van Zieks.
I move to subpoena Enoch Drebber and Dr. Sith. Holy shit! I am the law. Screw Vortex.
Bailiff, send a subpoena of notice to the Scientific Investigation Unit. Dr. Sith will appear before this court.
The court accepts the prosecution's motion. I missed that one. No, I was like, why is there an extra one? Whoops. I'm getting too excited! Enoch Drebber and Dr. Sith.
If the two of them are in this together, then this murder should have been impossible. Just a little more effort. It's finally time for the whole truth to come out.
Dr. Sith, you're learning very quickly you don't mess with Naruhodō Ryūnosuke. If he wants something, he's gonna make it happen. I appreciate your prompt appearance, Dr. Sith. Also, thank you, Baroque, for doing this.
Lord Baroque Van Zieks, I'm disappointed in you. Think that you'd betray and abandon the report submitted by Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office.
The only thing I mustn't betray is the truth. Regardless of who that person is, if I have even a shred of doubt, I will pursue it to the end. That's my duty as a prosecutor.
Enoch Drebber-san. The victim lost his life because of the device you built. And you, Dr. Sith. You were the first to arrive on the scene and to examine the victim's body as a coroner. The two of you cooperated with each other in order to carry out the murder. That's the defense's claim. And your proof. I don't have any concrete proof right now, but I do have an important clue. A clue. Naturally, I'm referring to the wax figure. The professor, the serial killer who was executed 10 years ago. I'm well aware. I watched his execution and confirmed his death myself. But is that the truth? And what is that supposed to mean? According to this newspaper that came out at the time of the incident, following his execution, the serial killer rose from the dead. Worthless lies. And the one who witnessed that scene was you, Enoch Drebber-san, was it not? If the scene you say you saw at the cemetery 10 years ago really did happen, then you have in your hands a secret that's incredibly valuable to Dr. Sith. A secret valuable enough to convince her to cooperate with you. Please, tell the court, Drebber-san. Tell us the truth about what you saw 10 years ago. Ah, so that's a university student from that time. Aye, he looks just like his figure that stands in the Chamber of Horrors. I hope he's not seriously going to try and say that he actually saw that. As I recall, he was a research student at London University. I guess even those are too talented for their own good can be troublemakers.
How amusing. The story that not one person at the time would take seriously. Is suddenly of great interest now, 10 years later, in a place like this. Yes, very well, if it's what you all wish. I'll tell you the truth, and we can have all this cleared up.
He seems a little too cooperative. I think they're still collaborating right now on the stand. Yeah. A little suspicious.
In that case, Mr. Drebber, the court will now hear your testimony about that night 10 years ago. Regarding the scene you encountered at Lowgate Cemetery.
Yes, all right.
I think we only have time to listen to this testimony, but let's see. There's like 3 minutes left of recording time here. The scene 10 years ago.
The reason I went to Lowgate Cemetery that night 10 years ago was for my second job.
Holy shit, the music's picking up.
The illustration in the newspaper depicts what I saw that night, but... thinking about it now, I never actually saw the professor. After that, a pretty lady paid me a visit and made a wax figure of me. After that, I gave up on my dreams of becoming a scientist. Well, to be honest, that article was the reason.
I knew it. He's backtracking his claims now. God damn it. Back up a second there. You didn't see him?
Well, of course not. There's no way the dead can come back to life.
What the heck? But then, what's printed in this article?
That's nothing more than a bit of rubbish masquerading as a newspaper.
Oh my god.
If the contents of this article are false, then we won't be able to pursue their connection as accomplices any further.
Don't tell me that's why he...
By the way, witness, you said you were in the cemetery that night for your second job, correct?
Yes, I suppose you could call it grave robbing. Lowgate Cemetery is located right behind the prison. Therefore, it was famous among students as a place where the ghosts of death row inmates appear.
Grave robbing?
Yes, I dig up bodies that had just been buried and sell them. Oh, but not to worry. I didn't lay a finger on any of the items or valuables buried with them.
Oh yeah, because that makes it a whole lot better. So you were one of those grave robbers that's become quite the societal problem recently.
We students at the time called them soul sellers.
How utterly sacrilegious.
Yes, well, you may rest assured knowing that I was harshly punished for my actions. The Daily Circus, they dug up my name and printed it. That caused all sorts of trouble, and I had no choice but to withdraw from the university. The only newspaper that mentioned me by name was that one.
I see. Incidentally, what of the person who drew this illustration?
Ah, the reporter who wrote the article about me drew it as I watched. I truly regret it all now. Why did I have to go and make up that wild story about something I hadn't even seen?
That's because you didn't make it up, you piece of shit. God.
In that case, defense, your cross-examination, if you please.
Will do, Your Honor. Which we will do in the next video, so I will see you guys then.